All right. Okay, so you should see my calendar there, my screen. And let's go back to your website in the Cougar View. And one change I want to make here, and this caused some confusion in my on-campus class, and that is, of course, we're not going to have a test next week. What I really meant, test 2 is in week 10, 10, and that is after spring break. So next week is the spring break. I sometimes forget that. So, and of course, we want to make sure that everyone is aware we're not going to have a test during spring break. Nothing is due during spring break. You're free to work ahead during spring break if you want to get caught up on some things, but we will not, interrupt your spring break with anything. Is exactly just for that if you want to take a break. So we do have one more chapter that we're covering in your textbook that will be included on test 2, and that's on corporate strategies. We have a couple of videos out there as well as the new PowerPoints that you haven't seen yet. So do download the PowerPoints and watch those videos under the week 9 learning module before you take your weekly quiz. And then we have our second team assignment for this semester called the team SWOT. We will add on to the SWOT. I know you've done SWOT in other classes. We are going to add on to the SWOT, though, after April 5, your next step as a team will be assigning strategic priorities for your company. And I'll show you how to do that. We're going to lead you step by step through the strategic planning process. But for right now, we do have the SWOT analysis that is due on April 5. I have opened up another team private discussion board. This is another team assignment. Now, what are we doing here? What I am saying to your team is I want you to post by this Sunday night. Tell me on this private discussion board who is responsible for what. All right. So let's go to the SWOT team assignment and take another look at it. All right. Okay, let me get back into instructor mode here because I won't be able to show you it as well in the student view mode. So let's go to the instructor mode. And all right, so here we go, the team SWOT analysis. And this again is a team assignment. And I have some specific instructions, and I also have included a student example. You can see this student example. When you download it, you will see that it is, in fact, a company that is no longer in existence because it merged. Now Whole Foods is owned by Amazon. I'm sure you are aware of that. So this was done several years ago, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what an A paper might look like. This is one that was actually turned in, and you won't see, it's not a 100% perfect paper. You might see some errors on it, but it's a good paper. So I wanted you to see what one would look like. So do follow the instructions on the format of this. I don't like to give a page minimum, a maximum, but students press me to do that. And I would say that, in order to do well on this assignment, I don't know how you can do it in less than 10 pages, but keep it to no more than 20 pages. I've had a team turn in a paper one time before I asked people to start doing this, 50 pages, and that's way too much, and it's probably going to be repetitive. So, kind of eliminate the fluff in there. I would like for you to make it more concise and no more than 20 pages, including your references or works cited page. I want it 1.5 space, not single space, 12-point font so I can see it well, 1-inch margins, the typical thing. So You will notice that it will be run through the Turnitin that checks for plagiarism and ChatGPT. On this paper, you will probably include some direct quotes, but put it in quotation marks and cite the source. So see the student example on how to do that. You probably will also include some charts and graphs from the internet. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But you do have to cite your source throughout the paper. So make sure that you do that. But you'll see that this paper has 3 sections. The first section is called strategic posture. The second one is the external environment, macro and micro, and then the internal environment. Now, most teams in this online class have 4 students. So you might ask, how do we break it up? Well, obviously, section 1 is the easiest section. Your team has already done a revised mission statement on one of the first team discussion board assignments was the revised mission and vision, you might remember, for your company. So that's been done. So now all your team would need to do is look to see what the company has stated as their strategic goals are. That's something you can get directly from their annual report. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. And then also, do they talk about their social responsibility policies? This is something they're currently doing. If you can't find anything, then your team might recommend something here in this section. Your team might say, well, at a minimum, we think that they should provide ethics training for their managers to make sure that they're operating ethically and legally. Or you might have another recommendation for them, because we all know that the bar is set by your company's competitors. So if their competitors are doing things that your company is not doing, then that might be something that could hurt them, competitively in terms of appealing to their target market. So you might have some suggestions there. If you can't find that they're doing something, and most companies will brag about what they're doing, they want the goodwill and they want the PR, the positive PR from it. So you can probably find something that they're doing in the way of corporate social responsibility. So that's the first section. This shouldn't be more than maybe a couple of pages, maybe 3 pages max. And then we move into the meat of this paper, which is the external and internal analysis. Now, there are a couple of ways you could break up this. Now, if you have 4 students on your team, maybe you divide up the section 2, have one person do the macro, the pestle environment, and one person do the micro or the 5 forces analysis, right? You could do it that way, or you could break up section 3. Section 3 will include a financial ratio analysis. You can get that on yahoofinance.com. You could get that on Forbes. Some students use Forbes to get the financial ratio. And I want you to go back at least 3, preferably 4 years on this, so we can see trends. We can see the trends going on. And again, you might also include some charts and graphs that the company has published out there. As long as you're citing the source, then that's fine. I don't care if you copy and paste, as long as you're citing the source within your paper, as well as on your references and works cited page at the end. Okay, so but you do need to include a 4 or 5 year income statement. If you can't go back 5 years, at least get a 4-year income statement and balance sheet, and a basic ratio analysis. So look at the student example that I have. Now, as I said before, you could break up section 2 into 2, give this to 2 different students, have one do my macro and one do micro. Or you could break up section 3. You could say, whoever your quant guy is, if you have a finance or accounting person on your team, they do the financial statement analysis, and then have someone else do the other internal strengths and weaknesses. And they may include, looking at your company's research and development or operations management or HR management or marketing strength, whatever you think is a strength or a weakness for your firm. And have that person write up that section and have someone else do the financial spreadsheet analysis. And that's someone, if you have someone on your team who is in the quant area, that's accounting or finance, then naturally they should be the one working on section 3, right? So by this Sunday night, what I would really like to see your team do, at the very minimum, in progress towards completing this team assignment, is at least let me know who is responsible for what. So I want you to go out to your team private discussion board, and you see you have one for the CAPSIM, and this is, again, is a private, but do post on your team SWOT analysis private discussion board who's responsible for what. Now you'll notice that I also have a different deadline on this than for the team as a whole. When you turn in your final paper, I would have all my teammates tell them that they need to turn in their sections a week prior to when the team paper, which is a full paper that you put together after each person works on his or her own part, I would have everybody turn in their paper at least a week in advance, because what you don't want to happen, especially since this is an online class and you don't see your teammates every week like my on-campus class does, you don't want someone on your team who's responsible for a particular section to wait until the night before it's due, for God's sake, to turn their part in. All right. Everybody is responsible for the entire paper. What does that mean? That means that if you have one student on your team who is not doing their part, not turning it in, you keep sending them reminders, your part needs to be turned in, then it may come to a point where everybody else on your team will have to pick up the slack and do that person's part. That would mean that person's name would not be put on the team paper, though. All right, just so you make sure everyone on your team understands that they have a deadline to get their team section turned in, and you can use this private discussion board to turn in your individual sections, but everybody on the team is responsible for having the complete paper done. So if someone on your team doesn't finish their part, you'll have to do it for them. Just leave their name off the paper. They don't get credit for the paper if they're not contributing like they should. Does everybody understand that? So yeah, go ahead and at a very minimum, let's divide up the responsibilities for this paper, and do read over to see if you have any questions before. Now we won't meet next week, it's spring break, but you can always shoot me an email and I'll try to respond as quickly as I can to it. And if you need me to kind of put some motivation with one of your teammates who is not responding and not contributing, I'll be glad to set up, a meeting with your team, or a one-on-one with the teammate if they're not responding to your requests for their completion. So let's everybody get our teammates motivated to get started on this, because March 29 will be here before you know it. And if you divide this up among 4 members, it's not a big deal for any one person. It's only a big deal if you have, a couple of people on your team who aren't doing their fair share of the work. But dividing it up into smaller pieces like that is not a big deal. So that's one of the reasons why we do this in teams. Any questions about the team SWOT analysis that's due on April 5?
So how will we turn it in individually, like our individual parts?
Well, I think the easiest way, and again, you're not turning it into me so much as you are to your team, okay? But the easiest way to compile it so that I know and you know who's not doing something is to simply go out and have your teammates post it to the private discussion board. You see? So let's see, let's say I was on your team, then I would just go out to our discussion board, and here's the team SWOT analysis private discussion board, and I would start a thread. All right, and then on that I am going to upload my section to the private. That's why it's a private discussion board. It's just for you and your teammates, and only you and your teammates can see that. All right, so what you're going to be doing as a team between March 29 and April 5 is taking those individual sections and putting them together into one cohesive paper. But I would like to see who's not doing the work on your team. And you also, as a team leader especially, you want to see who has and has not done their work. So that's why I say I would have an interim deadline for all of my teammates to make sure everyone's getting their work done on time, for a week before the whole thing is due, which is the whole thing is due on April 5. And once again, that doesn't mean that I've had teams in the past, for example, who came to me and said, look, it's April 4 and John on our team is still not turned in his section. So we're just going to leave that section out. We're turning in what we have. And my response would be, no, you're still responsible for that section. Even if John hasn't turned his in, you're going to need to make up for that. John, just don't put John's name on the paper because he has not done his part on it. He doesn't get credit for it. So just let everybody know on your team that they need to turn in their paper. You might have a different deadline for your teammates. Maybe March 29, you feel like, well, give them a different deadline. But I would not wait until April 4, the night before it's due, to have everybody turn it in, because then you've only got one day to pull it all together, make sure it's the right formatting, make sure that it's one cohesive, fluid document you see. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, or did I confuse everybody?
No, that
Yeah.
answers it.
Okay. That's what I do. This is just a motivational thing. You don't want to wait till the last minute to have all this done, because it's not fair. And I would just have that conversation with my team members. But what I want you to do by this Sunday night is just let me know, is just post on to this private discussion board who's responsible for what. Let me see if anybody's done that. Let me give you an example. A team might have already done that in my on campus class, because we talked about that yesterday. Yes, so I already have one team that has completed theirs, and they've just said, these are our team SWAT responsibilities. And so the teams in my on-campus class is smaller than the online one. So they just said, look, section 1 is this person, section 2 is this person, section 3 is this person. For you guys, because you have 4 or more members to each team, I think I have a few teams in my online that have 5. Then tell me specifically how you're going to break it up, So again, you could break up section 2. You got macro and micro, or you could break up section 3. You've got this financial spreadsheet analysis, and then the internal strengths and weaknesses in the other areas. Because your company's finances could be a strength or a weakness for you. Many of the companies I have chosen this semester are in good financial shape. There are a few that are struggling. So you want to say, is this a strength or a weakness for your company? So yeah, go ahead and just let me know by this Sunday who's going to be responsible for what. And it doesn't mean you have to go into a whole lot of detail, but it does tell your teammates what section they're responsible for. And so if somebody wants to work ahead and get that done over spring break, I'm not saying that you should. It is a break, but if somebody does, they'll know what they're responsible for, and they can go ahead and work on it. All right. Any other questions about the SWAT project for right now before we move on? Okay, so you will notice, let me get back to, we have student view. You will notice that I have opened up not just the week 9 module, which is this week. All right, and I have, let's see, I have 2 videos that I have under this week, and that is the corporate level strategies video. This is the last chapter we're going to have on our next exam, and that's the last exam that we'll have. Remember that the final exam is going to be a CompXM assessment, which is using the simulation. And then I also have a forecasting video that kind of goes over again how to forecast, because I think some teams struggle with this. We'll go out and take a look at our results of the CAPSIM round 1 in just a minute. But this kind of goes over, this is exactly the best method to forecast. We want our marketing forecast on the marketing decisions menu to be as accurate as possible. But if you do make an error in judgment, then it should err on the conservative side, meaning you don't want your forecast to be too optimistic, because on a forecast that's too optimistic could cause your company to go into an emergency loan situation, run out of cash. So we don't want it to be too optimistic. We do want to be optimistic on the production menu, where you're deciding how much to produce, because you don't want to run out of stock. But on the marketing forecast menu, you want it to be as accurate, as realistic. And if you do make an error on the conservative side on the marketing forecast. So forecasting usually is, if I see problems in a business model on the simulation, usually it's a forecasting error. So do watch that video, and then talk about that as a team. What should your forecast be for the next upcoming round? Okay, so once again, and one other thing, you may or may not have heard of this, since you're if you're 100% online, maybe you haven't heard. We have a virtual session that will be tonight at 6 o'clock. You can go ahead and register for it, but even if you haven't registered, you can go ahead and of course, you know how to do this with your phone, and try to attend. If you think you might be interested in a graduate degree, in this session, we will go over the different graduate degrees that are offered by the Turner College and how to apply for a graduate degree. At this point, you might be saying, well, I need a break. After I graduate, I want some time to myself. And that's fine. I agree with that. I took 2 years off after I got a bachelor's degree. I understand that. But this might be a good session to attend, just so you know, for future reference, if you think you might ever go to a graduate school. We have some online programs and we have some on-campus programs. And our on-campus programs are designed for working professionals. They're all at night. So you can log in tonight at 6 o'clock to hear about that. I know you're not really thinking that far ahead because you're busy with your classes right now, but this won't take a whole lot of your time. So just want to let you know, I put that on the calendar. That's not a have to, that's optional. But if you do have time tonight at 6 to join the online virtual session, they will explain to you how to apply for graduate school and talk to you about the different programs that we have as well. Okay, let's take a look then at the CAPSIM simulation. If we don't have any other questions about this week's assignments, I am assuming. Let's take a look and see how the class did on the simulation. Let me sign in there. And I believe I looked at it already and I didn't have any real concerns on it. Let's take a look. My computer's a little bit slow right now. Okay. All right, here we go. Let's get in there. Okay, yeah, my computer struggles a little bit when I am in Teams for some reason. So it's just, okay, here we go. Okay, so here is the online. As you probably have figured out, we have two industries going in the online class. This is the first industry, and here are the students in the first industry. You can see we have 6 teams in each industry, just like we did in the practice rounds. The difference is these 6 teams are all made up of students instead of, computer generated teams. So here is the first industry. When I said I didn't have any issues, what I meant was I don't see anybody operating in the red, meaning you lost money. So everybody made money, some more than others. It looks like Team Baldwin had the highest profit for the first round as well as the second round, or the cumulative profit is going to look the same as the round profit. The reason being that we're just 1 round in now. So everything looks fine. We're not just focused on profit though. Remember, we're looking also at who is investing for long-term growth. So you'll see the team oftentimes that made the highest profit will not have the highest balance scorecard score. So in fact, the team with the highest balance scorecard score in round 1 was Team Erie. And Team Erie had a balance scorecard score at the 89th percentile, which is really good. Now, I'm not looking at round 1 a lot though, because I see a lot of flip-flopping that goes on after round 1. So sometimes the teams that score high in round 1 are not the teams that'll score high beginning in round 3. That's not always the case, but that's sometimes the case. So what I'm really looking at is where you're investing. So we want to be sure we are investing for long-term growth, not so much focusing on short-term profit. Profits are important, of course, but that's not the most important thing here. You'll see that Team Erie did not score a lot of points on profits, which most of us are going to be in the same boat there because we are trying to invest to grow. Contribution margin also the same. Once we get to round 3 and we can start investing in TQM, you know the benefits of TQM, I should see the scores really go up pretty dramatically by round 3 and 4 after the TQM investments. So as I said, I'm not worried about the first industry, especially in the simulation. Let's take a look at the second industry. The same thing occurred. Everybody seems to be a little more level in the second industry, though, in terms of their profit, cumulative profit, return on sales. It looks like Team Chester had the highest cumulative profit in round profit. And then this is who is in industry 2. So we have 2 different industries going on. When we look at the balance scorecard for the first round across the industry, I know you can get your own balance scorecard score, but you may not know how you compare with all the other teams in class. So you can see we have a lot of similar scores in round 1 in this industry. This means this industry is more on a level playing field, which means it might get highly competitive in later rounds. So I'm not worried about anything at this point in the simulation. I think you have, it appears that you are implementing the strategy. You did get your decisions uploaded properly. So we're doing well. Let's keep it that way. Always, after you enter your decisions, you are going to look at your pro formas, your pro forma income statement to make sure there isn't any red there, and your pro forma balance scorecard to see if you've achieved the score that you wanted to achieve on your balance scorecard. If you have red on your pro forma income statement, it means that your business decisions don't make good business sense. So we need to go back and tweak some things, and it might be reducing your costs in some way, either by reducing some R&D or reducing some automation or reducing some marketing investments or HR investments. So, reducing your cost or raising your price or combination. So we need to tweak our strategy a bit to make sure we don't have red in any of our products. So it does take at least a round, as you know, when you introduce a new product to make that product profitable. You can't normally make it profitable the same round that you R&D it, because you're not selling it yet, you have to add the production line in order to start producing it. So keep that in mind. So any questions so far? As I said, I'm not worried. Things are looking good so far. So far, so good. Just make sure that you are double checking to be sure that you have entered your official decisions. Make everybody go log out of the program and log back in to proof over it and make sure there aren't any typos that were uploaded, and that all the decisions that your team agreed on are there, so you don't have any issues moving forward. So I'm very happy to say I don't see any issues or problems in this first round, and I hope they don't occur. So this is a good sign for the class as a whole. But keep doing what you're doing. Pay attention to what your competitors are doing so that you can respond appropriately and stay ahead. Try to stay ahead with your strategy. All right, any questions for this week about the simulation or the other team project that we're starting this week as well? Any questions for me? Okay, I am going to, let me go ahead and stop the recording. My goodness. Okay, stop recording.